Our next guest, Chief Economist and co-founder of Macro Business, Leith Van Onselen. Good morning.
G'day, Tom.
Look, it doesn't surprise me. I've always waited for the day when indebted politicians, or when I say indebted, their governments are indebted, look at what is now $4.3 trillion of super and think, you know what, if we could just grab some of that, we could pay for all these things. Is there any chance Jacinta Allen could do that?
Yeah, look, I certainly hope not. But basically, the fundamental problem is obviously Victoria's drowning in debt. The state government can't provide the things that it's responsible for. So we're talking about infrastructure, service delivery, that sort of thing. So as a result, it wants to tap superannuation funds. Now, this is sort of a throwback to the public-private partnership privatisation model that has pursued over the last, 20 years or so. But also, the other thing, Tom, is it actually echoes kind of what Treasurer Jim Chalmers at the federal level has been saying. So he says that he's a believer in, quote, values-based capitalism, and he's sort of flagged that he wants to direct, superannuation money into areas like renewable energy. Now, I think this, like you, I think this is an absolute disgrace and should be avoided, because the superannuation system is basically here to work in the best financial interests of members and to achieve the highest possible returns. And it's here to ensure a dignified retirement. And the way to do that is to invest in assets, projects, whatever, that provide the highest risk-adjusted return. And the problem is it's not here as a slush fund to be rated by politicians for their boondoggle projects and their political aspirations.
Well, I mean, I had we had a guest on the radio last week who reckons the suburban rail loop at best will return 50 cents in the dollar. So, you put $1 in, you only get 50 cents of broader benefits out of it. So that's like saying if you invested in it, you're investing in something which will lose half your money. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't find that a particularly attractive prospect.
Absolutely not. So I think the most recent cost benefit was like 60-something cents, but obviously the cost has gone up since then. So I think that's about right. But also we're seeing this right across the range. So as I said, the federal government wants to rate our super to basically invest in renewable energy projects. Well, Sweden's just done that. Their government directed their pension system to direct that, and they lost something like 18 billion euros.
That's right. They pump billions of dollars into some company, not dissimilar to what Albo wants to do with solar panels and things, and it's gone bankrupt and has taken a big chunk of Swedish retirees' savings with it.
That's right, and so that's the last thing that we want to happen to Australia. But unfortunately, it seems that our politicians, both at the federal and state level, are trying to rate our super for these sorts of projects, which is just not what super's there for.
No.
It's to work in our best interest to provide a dignified retirement. So really, we need maximised risk-adjusted returns.
Now, but there are some other examples of this closer to home. Like I've read, and look, just take this with a grain of salt, that CBUS, which represents a lot of construction workers, invests a lot in buildings and things that the construction workers build. So it helps fund the very things that their members work on. But the problem is like office buildings and so forth perhaps aren't worth as much as they used to be because of working from home. So, that's an example of maybe they're over-investing in something because it's good for their members' employment prospects, but not necessarily all that great for their retirement prospects.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, I'm not against this sort of investment if it's chosen by the super funds because they see an opportunity. But what concerns is when the government tries to direct super funds into these sorts of ventures, because then you're distorting the market and you're putting pressure to basically invest in areas that they wouldn't otherwise do. That's my concern.
Well, all these big super funds have, boards of directors and so forth, a lot of whom are ex-Labor politicians like Wayne Swan and ex-unionists. But, are they going to be strong enough to resist government overtures to tap into their money?
I certainly hope so, but I'm not that confident just because I've watched the way Australia runs in the last several decades, and unfortunately there is a lot of cronyism in there. So we can only hope for the best, but certainly we need to put pressure on the politicians not to go down this path because it's our money. This is our private retirement money that has been taken out of our wages. It belongs to us. It doesn't belong to politicians, and it shouldn't be used as a slush fund.
All right, think of your time. Leith Van Onselen there, Chief Economist and co-founder of Macro Business. And look, it's one good reason to perhaps think about running your own super fund if you have enough funds and if it stacks up and if you can put the time in doing it. Because if you run it yourself, unless the government comes and points a gun at your head, can you imagine that, Jacinta Allen turning up? Give me 20% of your super or face the consequences. Hopefully it won't work like that.